Has anybody heard from him?
Tim Simons. Tantalus, you're here. How are you? You doing good? Good?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've been here for a minute, but...
Where's the makeup?
So you kept me here for a while, but you also wanted me to spend 2.5 hours in the makeup chair for a podcast?
No, I just thought...
I put on the costume.
And the spear, too. I didn't even know...
Yeah, I didn't even want the spear. They just handed it to me.
Wow,
They thought
okay.
it would look cool. I think it does. Anyway, I think that we can recover from this, and I think today's going to be great.
I think so. I think we're going to have a good show. I'm sorry. This is really freaking me out. Can we get you in makeup? Do you mind? Do we have the contacts on standby? That was kind of a crazy episode. Welcome back to episode 2 of the Percy Jackson and the Olympians official podcast. And I'm so excited to talk about the chariot races. That was something that we had put so much work and so much effort and so much love into. And I'm so excited to start talking about it later on in the episode. But right now, I wanted to talk about, selfishly, something that I loved getting to bring to life, which was the wedding dress. Every question I've ever gotten about season 2, frankly, has been about the dress. Literally every question, like in interviews, at the Comic-Con panel, like no matter where it is, I've been asked about the dress. And I'd also be very remiss if I didn't mention our incredible costume designer for season 2, Kate Adair, and our incredible costumes team who's there on the ground with me, helping Walker and I switch in and out of the dress, like less than 30 seconds.
Wedding dress?
Yeah, I dug it out of shipwrecked cargo in the cave. Don't ask. I don't know how much time we have.
Grover,
Yes?
I gotta ask.
The dress keeps me safe. His eyesight's not so good.
You mean the monster who took you?
Polyphemus. He knows I'm here, but he thinks I'm a lady. Cyclops!
It's okay. That's Tyson. He's staying here now.
That dress took so much care and 8 fittings, which was not my fault, no matter what anybody else tells you. It took 8 fittings because of the dress, not because of me. But that's enough of that. And without further ado, I'd like to bring in our next guest, Tim Simons. How you doing? Thank you for being here.
I'm doing pretty good. This is the official Percy Jackson and the Olympians companion podcast.
Yeah,
I actually run the unofficial one.
You're in charge of all of those fan accounts?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's me. Yeah.
It's also Percy Jackson and the Olympians.
Percy Jackson and the Olympians. That's why we're not very popular, is because I
Exactly,
never
yeah.
really get the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the original myth, I don't know how much you know about Tantalus's like origins or like where he comes from in the Greek mythos, but in the underworld, he's like surrounded by fruits and water that he just cannot drink. And I feel like camp has to be an upgrade from that, you know?
You know, it's kind of an amazing curse.
Yeah.
In that everything is right there for you, but you can never actually quite get it.
Yeah, I mean,
And
that must suck.
It's
like,
really brutal.
Yeah.
But one thing that I think is incredibly funny is that the gods were like, okay, he's been doing that for millennia. He's been in that water, not being able to drink for millennia. He's been underneath those grapes trying to get him to eat for a millennia. The only thing that could possibly be worse is to be in charge of a bunch of kids. That this is actually like a step up in the punishment. And like, yes, he does get out for a minute, but even with that comes the idea of like, well, now you're responsible for a bunch of teenagers, which as a parent of teenagers, I can tell you I might prefer the underworld.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I know, speaking of your kids, I feel like I've heard, I don't want to assume, but I'm pretty sure I've heard that they're fans of the book, right?
Yeah, no, they're huge fans of the books, and this was a really fun opportunity for me that came up because most of the stuff that I've done throughout my career has not been exactly kid-friendly. And so I think that it was a really amazing thing to be able to get an opportunity to jump into something that not only that my kids could see, that my kids were sort of already interested in. They had gotten into the books before I got the offer to come up and join you guys.
When you first got the job offer, did you run it by your kids to see like, is this something I should do, or like? Did you just surprise him and we're like, hey, your dad's going to be running Camp Half-Blood?
Yeah, I just surprised them with that, and they were pretty stoked. I don't
That's
run
really
most
cool.
of my career choices by them. That would be a little odd.
I think we should start leaving your career in the hands of children.
Yeah, 2 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
Just to be like, hey guys, I got an offer. What do you think? And they're like, well, I don't know. They didn't think there were enough fast cars. I can't do it. They want me to be in Fast and the Furious, and that's it.
I wanted to ask you about what the dynamic is like between Tantalus and Mr. D. You two in real life are friends, hopefully, I think. But in the show, you guys, I mean, you're kind of his subordinate, or are you equals, or like what is the power dynamic between you two?
That's an interesting question, because I love that he is the camp director, but seems to abdicate all responsibility at all times.
Yeah.
Like it seems like he is just like, I mean, it makes sense for Dionysus as like a party guy.
Yeah.
To be like, yeah, I just got like a cush job and I'm gonna let everybody else do the work. I think maybe that's one of the things that makes it funny, that I maybe take my job a little bit more seriously than he does,
Yeah.
but I am status-wise, I am lower status than him, but I feel like playing higher status as a lower status character can
Yeah.
always be funny. So those kinds of things, I don't know, those kinds of status plays are always fun.
Weapons allowed, dirty tricks encouraged.
You skipped no killing?
Killing not so much, but things happen, etc., etc.
I've got 50 on Ares' cabin.
Taken.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about in that world, actually, our acting coach, Andrew, constantly talks about, like, acting burns more calories than you think it does. And, like, I did a scene the other day, and I came up to him, and I was like, I feel, like, light. Like, my body feels weird, and I feel like I just got off the treadmill, and, like, walking feels really easy. And he's like, it's because you're not eating enough, or, like, you're not drinking enough. And so how do you balance, like, the fuel consumption that being an actor takes with literally not being able to eat? Like, do you not eat offset even though, like, you feel the need to, or?
Yeah, after I checked in with my general practitioner, I go pretty hard on these things. I think ultimately, and probably on and off this production for 2 months or so, I didn't eat that entire time.
Wow.
Yeah, not once.
That is incredible.
Pretty impressive.
You didn't eat once for 2 months.
No, I didn't
And I'm
eat
assuming you
once.
didn't drink any water either.
No, didn't drink any water.
Wow.
No, I mean, I think what keeps you alive is the commitment to the project. You know what I mean?
The love of the craft is the only
The
sustenance
love of
you
the
need.
craft
One
of
those
acting
things.
is
Yeah.
what fueled me.
Yeah,
I
no,
didn't
100%.
eat or drink. I'm still dealing with the long-term health repercussions. Those are ongoing.
You actually didn't dye your hair at all. It just turned
It
stark
ju-
white
it
from the
just turned
stress.
solid white from lack of calorie intake for 2 months.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard it's just gonna start going.
Yeah, right now I'm like patient zero.
That's another thing I wanted to ask you about. Like, how much research did you do into Tantalus? Because being surrounded by children, given given Tantalus's history with children, cannot be the best feeling in the world for him.
I did like a fair amount of research, but all the research that I did, if it's not applicable to the actual script that was being written,
Exactly,
then
yeah.
if it doesn't help the motivation of the actual text that we're given for this show, then you kind of have to let it. You kind of have to let it go. And
Yeah.
I feel like even the costume choice,
Yeah.
you know, like the amazing costume that the costume department built, that choice right away lends itself to a different physicality, to a different way that person
Yeah.
carries himself. So there is that balance of like researching, but also understanding we're making our own thing here.
Did the makeup help you at all with that? I find that it's one of those things, like I put on the ears and I put on the horns and I kind of forget that they're there.
Yeah.
But I guess like looking back, it kind of unconsciously affects your performance. Like all of it does.
Yeah, those things are always fun. Like if you go back to like mask training, you know, I didn't do like a lot of like mask performance training or like, you know, like Greek training when I
Yeah.
was in college, but did a little bit of it. And there is something that like about, in a way, wearing masks that then informs performance, especially in physicality. You have to do a lot more physical work, which I find very fun.
Yeah.
So it definitely helps. It also like, it gives you so much leeway to be, especially in this show where the adults get to be silly. You know, it feels like the
Yeah.
adults in this show get to think of them, and again, this is a status play. They get to think of themselves as very serious, very intense people, but they're always doing incredibly silly things, and so I do think that the makeup and the hair helped with that.
That isn't like when they're talking about masks, they always talk about like you have to let the mask breathe, and like you have to, like it's a different person like when you put it on. Yeah. Even if it's just the eyes that you're seeing through. Yeah. You have to like
that was
breathe
something
through
that I did not enjoy when you talk about the eyes, the contacts. Yeah. I mean, like God.
I asked one of our makeup ladies, Naomi, like if you enjoyed the makeup, and she's like, if you ask him about that on the podcast, he's gonna say the least favorite part of it was the contacts.
It was uncomfortable. I tried to be as the things that I would say to my kids is like, sometimes you just got to be a trooper. Yeah. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just got to be a trooper. I tried to be a trooper about it. But then there was like, sometimes it's just physically hard to be a trooper. Every once in a while, I was like, I feel like there was a time when we were out at the chariot race where I was like, guys, I actually don't know physically if I'm going to be able to get them back in.
Well, speaking of the chariot tracks, I mean, I wasn't there I got to watch a little bit, and obviously you were there, but I think it'd be good if we brought some people in who actually had to do with creating it, so we could hear a little bit about more what that process was like.
You know, here's the thing, I don't think that would be a good idea. No, because I really want more attention on myself.
Well, I actually have like a ton of questions I didn't get to that I really would like to hear, so I say we just cut.
As long as you're going to throw to me during the other, that's fine.
I'm going to bring them in just for ambiance's sake.
Great. Okay, perfect.
And I'd like to introduce our next guests, our executive producer and director, James Bobin, who's joining us from New York. Thank you very much for being here.
You're very welcome. I'm delighted to be here, live from my house.
From your real-life house in New York. And also, Dan Shotz, our showrunner and leader.
So happy to be here.
Thank you for being here, guys, on the weekend.
You hesitated before leader.
It was interesting. He did this a couple times, and James got fearless the first time, and then I got fearless the second time.
I'm more fearless.
Yeah, a little bit,
He's right about that.
Well, you're on the portrait.
It's a very funny image. It's like you're gathered around me so I can read my will to you. It's very strange at the moment. To you, Arian, I leave my car. To you, Tim, the house.
Dude, it's so nice. They like left this food for us out here, which is like amazing.
Feel free, please.
It looks delicious.
It's so good.
Yeah. So, so I actually
Tim, help yourself, obviously.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. No, help yourself. So I wanted to get into our first question for Tim. I wanted to ask you something about character motivations, which I feel like everybody here can speak on. He is he's not the nicest guy. And he makes the decision to lock Percy up in cabin confinement instead of letting him participate in the chariots. Now, I feel like if you want to get a kid killed, letting them participate in the chariot races is the way to do it. So why does he lock Percy up? Is that like an acknowledgement of his strength, or is it?
That's a really good question. I might actually defer.
I was like, he was asking you, but you want me to take this one?
Yeah, I would say you take this one.
Deep.
I think Tantalus is very nervous about a Percy Jackson in this universe.
Yeah.
I think no matter what, coming here and the lore of what it is, behind him there's always, a guy that's that villainous, there is a certain level of insecurity. Would you say that, like when you were sort of owning him?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you don't try to keep somebody down that much unless they are a threat. And I guess maybe there is also a part of it of, I would rather his death be by my hand than by accident. There's probably that might also, James, I'll throw that one to you if you agree with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think you respect him, but I think you're aware of his power. So when you have an advantage of superiority through your position, you'd use it, right? And then you choose your moment carefully. So initially putting him away makes sense, I think.
Yeah.
I think rather than letting chance, the chance of an accident is not as good as a purposeful, elimination, shall we say.
He's also new at this job, which is also what's really fun about it. He has kind of no idea what he's doing.
Yeah.
But wants to be in control, wants to take over, wants to show dominance, and will do whatever it takes to do that.
Yeah. He's like a classic headmaster who hates kids. That's what's fun about him. It's just a really funny moment throughout. He's a great adversary for Percy. It's a really enjoyable moment you guys have when you're talking about the rule books, that sort of thing. Like one-upmanship is really fun.
Well, speaking of, I feel like that archetype of, headmaster who just hates the kids is pretty common. I just watched Dead Poet Society for the first time, and that's a pretty big archetype in that character.
I do wonder like what Rick
pulls from
because there's like so many characters like this throughout the series, and I feel like as a teacher he probably saw so many things.
He must have seen so many.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I got the chance to speak with him, and he actually said that Mrs. Dodds was a very real woman.
I'll go ahead and tell you about Mrs. Dodds. When I was telling the story to my son, I was drawing on real names of people he knew because he went to the school where I taught. So he knew all these people. Mrs. Dodds was the pre-algebra teacher in 6th grade. She was one of my critiques. Her name was Mrs. Dodds. And she was a little intense, and the kids were scared of her. He thought it was really funny that Mrs. Dodds turned into a monster. And actually, when I read it to Mrs. Dodds, I said, I have a confession to make. I turned you into a monster and killed you. Here you go. She loved it. She loved it. She said that all the kids were terrified of her now, and it made her life so much easier.
Same name, same everything. So maybe Tantalus is inspired by one. But
It's gotta be.
When you're making an adaptation, obviously, you can't just draw from the source material. You have to draw from everything that you know. What are some of the characters that inspired Tantalus for our beautiful version?
I don't know if you mentioned this while you were on, but did you mention what your look was inspired by?
I was pretty sure, because when I sat in for like the first makeup test, that a lot of the pictures are on the wall were Robert Smith from The Cure.
James, it was true. Remember?
Obviously.
Yeah.
He's an English legend, that guy. And so obviously he's got a fantastic look. And it's a great thing for a teacher to look like him, and a leader to look like him is a very, very good start for a character. So we thought that his hair particularly is very interesting. And I think with Tim's great physical presence, he's quite a tall chap. You have that stand-up hair, it's going to really make it really interesting.
I always forget how tall he actually is because
So
I didn't really work
tall.
with him.
Yeah, and then like let's add another 9 inches of hair on top.
Yeah.
And thick shoes.
And
Yeah.
thick shoes.
Like it's a ridiculously tall. It's actually really fun like that. You can accent the character.
I think one of the really brilliant things about the choice that you guys made is that like ultimately this is a show that is geared toward a younger audience, and you want it to be thrilling and you want it to be scary, but then in a way always finding ways to undercut that by basing the character's look off Robert Smith from The Cure. It's like it sort of naturally is a little bit of a release valve to that stress and how scary it might be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think with Tantalus, it was always a tricky character because we're always trying to keep the show grounded, right? We want to feel like when anybody's watching this, that they're entering into a world that they can relate to, connect to. And Tantalus is from the underworld. So we had to like kind of push the envelope a bit of he needed to look like that's where he came from, that's where he lived. We needed him to be pale, really pale, be kind of bruised up, beaten up, be from.
And he has very human traits.
Yeah,
he's paranoid. He's a bit insecure. He's kind of like worried about this situation, I think. And so I think you give those characters a sort of real human grounding. You then believe them much more.
Oh, we're talking about Tantalus.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
No,
not me.
I'll say something nice
Not
about
Tim.
him.
No, Tantalus.
James, we do have to give a shout out to Tim, because even though it was so like pushing the envelope and over the top, like you're the one who grounded it. Like it was, you made it funny, you made it scary, you made it awesome, and it's like that's the hardest thing when you're in that makeup and you're in a kind of, we're trying to make it real world. How do you do that without making it feel so outside the show? So like, you deserve all that credit, man.
I really appreciate that.
And there's some
Thank
great
you.
bits that Tim just made up. Like at the end of the whole bird attack, he just says that little line, goes, "We did it." That was not in the script, I think. That was just you saying
true.
it.
Was that really?
And it was really funny.
We did it.
And those sort of things are such a great thing to help the character, and that's just Tim's great gift, is he can bring that to it. And he really made it feel like you want to spend time watching Tantalus, whatever he's doing, and that is also really important.
At the chariot races, I was only there to watch a little bit of it, but I got to watch that episode in prep for doing this podcast, and it was incredible. Like hearing him shriek into the mic, and that's how Annabeth gets the idea to blast the boombox. I mean, that was hilarious. I wanted to ask, why Mariah Carey?
It was the writer's room. We all were sitting around and literally go, what's going to scare the birds? and it was, who sings the highest note possible?
Yeah.
And everybody was like, I think it's Mariah Carey. And then
Yeah, she's famous for it.
She's famous
You
for
know what I
just
mean? She has
hitting
incredible range.
that whistle
just
note.
that.
And those high notes she gets are amazing.
You can't even believe she actually can do it. It's like, how is it? It doesn't feel human.
Yeah.
And she has that note, and it's the build to the note. Like that's what works so well in the scene is like the
Yeah, it goes up and up and up.
Yeah.
like builds and
Yeah,
builds.
yeah,
And so
exactly.
when all the birds are attacking, it's just beginning, and then you have that crescendo rise, which is just like it's kind of epic.
What was super helpful there was that if you watch that scene back on that dais up top where you have Mr. D and Tantalus, on the left there's a giant plate of fruit, which Tantalus can't eat. Now that fruit was in the sun all day and it attracted loads of wasps. And so what was helpful about that is that when we did shot the bird attack, I think you guys were generally brushing away actual wasps, which makes it look a lot like you're being attacked by birds, because your defense against a wasp is a lot like your defense against birds.
Yeah.
And so you just let it run.
Yeah.
And so I remember Jason being just attacked by
I think they
bees
were
and
in
wasps
his
all
hair.
day. They were everywhere. And so because of that giant fruit plate, they were trying to eat all day. And so I said, you guys just use the wasps as the birds. And that sure enough worked pretty well.
We have the wasp and you have Jimmer screaming into the mic.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
I feel like that's all you need to replicate fake
Oh my
birds.
God, you're reminding me of Jim screaming at the kids,
Yeah.
which was, so
Oh.
Jim is our first AD, and you remember when he had to sort of get all of these extras, these amazing kids from all over British Columbia to freak out. And so it was just his unbelievable performance where he was just like literally just shouting over and over.
He had to get them to react to every moment. So basically, obviously, the sequence of the chariot race lasts for ages. And so Jim had to basically memorize the events of the chariot race and then speak them out loud in real time and have the audience react accordingly. So that takes about 15 minutes. So he does it, and they're really good. And he turns to me, and I go, right, do that again. Another take, please.
And then how many hours later, he's still
His face.
doing it.
Yeah.
And those kids delivered. Like
Yeah.
they
did, yeah.
totally did. And what was awesome about, so ILM did the VFX of the birds. And if you look closely, if you go back and watch closely, you'll see that they added CG hair and CG sweaters and everything for as all the kids are swatting them away, like you see the birds actually pecking at all of the kids.
Oh, that's so
and
cool.
they have full interaction. It's awesome the work that they did. But that was an amazing experience. But the chariot, going back to the chariot race, to just talk about that experience. I think for James and myself, like it was probably the tallest order I think in our careers. Like trying to
we knew it was coming.
We knew it was coming and how to achieve it. And there's this moment where you go, okay, we need horses, we need a chariot track, we need children on makeshift chariots, and we need to do death-defying stunts. And it was kind of...
Yeah, that's a lot.
It was a lot. And we shot for like 11 days for 6 minutes of footage.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a game-changing moment for the show, I think, because it was like, how far can we push this? What can we achieve without, like, I sort of came out of the gate saying, we do not want to do CG horses. We want to do this practically. We want to do it for real. Mm-hmm. And it took everybody. It was the greatest, like, collaboration of people I've ever witnessed. Jim Rowe, our EP, who's in charge of the production, was to call the #1 horse guy in the country, a stunt coordinator who is a legend who was a legend in the business. It was a guy named Danny Virtue. Danny Virtue has probably worked with every star ever and trained them on horses, and every big movie that's come up here. And right as we called him, we said all of those things with all those impossibilities, and he said, when do we get started? And they trained those horses for, I mean, it was, how many months, James? 3 months?
Months.
Months.
Like, literally 3 months. And we had to also find riders that kind of could look plausibly like they were young enough to be part of camp. And so we basically got every single young cowboy from the Calgary Stampede, came straight from the Calgary Stampede to Vancouver to shoot with us. I remember very clearly that we talked about it initially very much no CG horses, this will all be real. But I was also told at the same time, we could never shoot actual actors with real horses at the same time in the same equipment. So that makes our lives much harder, of course. But at no point were two horses let by themselves with our actors, because it's too dangerous. And obviously the priority is for our actors, but also for the horses themselves. So it was a real technical challenge. And Danny, of course, was just the best at helping out with this in terms of like how we can actually practically do this. It was a long few weeks, but it's such a fantastic result.
I get chills. Like I was, when I at first, like we had cut it, but then we were sitting in the mix and hearing the sound for the first time. It just was so visceral. I actually got I got chills.
Yeah.
And it also, I know everybody saw at the end of the episode that it's in loving memory of it says in loving memory of a true pioneer, which is Danny passed away.
Oh my God!
He passed away, and this was his last big set piece and such a legendary career. I got to see him the week before he passed, and we got very close over the years. I've worked with him on many projects. I got to show him the cut of the chariot race like a week before he died. Like the smile on his face, like the pride in like what he had achieved was just like, it was brilliant. Just because he was such a community person and he brought people around him and he was a philanthropist, and every stunt person in Canada went through Danny's training and he was a father figure to them. So it was just like, it was really profound. So the fact that the whole world just saw this chariot race is like such a gift. And so James and I are like so unbelievably grateful. And Arian, you got to spend time with Danny.
Please, Finn.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I got to spend time with Danny on his ranch. We all went up for, we got to all learn how to ride, which I thought was very sweet. I'm not even within like a 10-foot radius of a horse anytime this season, but I was still invited to ride, and it was genuinely one of the best experiences of my life. Just something about being there, and I don't know, I think it genuinely did do something for us as a family.
And those stables we built on the set were actually used for horses overnight.
Yeah,
the
that's
horses lived
awesome.
on the set for a long time. So Danny and the family were up there for a long time helping us out with that too. Just managing the horses alone was a huge job, because we had a lot of horses. We had like 20 horses up there. Yeah. So we had a huge number of horses on set all day.
Not to mention all the other stuff that we use those horses for. We use them for the Pegasi, we use them for the Centaurs. Like especially in season 2.
Chiron is a horse.
Chiron literally is a horse.
Yeah, Cologne.
Like there's so
Cologne and
many
Q.
things that we use those horses for. That scene, in my opinion, the entire chariot race sequence like raised the bar for the show. Like we were a good show season 1, and then this was like a trial by fire.
I mean,
this
this guy had like the first, he had the best seat in the house to watch it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the royal box. You were up there in the royal box.
Yeah, basically.
Like the emperor.
I had a couch. I had some shade.
Yeah, you had a big horn you could
some
talk
wasps.
into, some wasps.
I mean, just for me, like I've said this before, but just for me, like looking around, I like when we were down at San Diego, I said this, but I'm used to working on like shabby comedies, and there is like we don't really have like a horse. I've never had a horse budget, like a horse budget.
Had like or an amphitheater.
Yeah, I've never really been around amphitheater budget, so it was really exciting for me.
I'm sorry you had to work with Jason though.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Seriously.
What was the hardest part about working with Jason?
I mean, it's hard to single one out. It really is. At a certain point, when something's just so bad, you really just got to ride the wave. Like what's the difference between pain at a 10 and pain at a 9?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It just all hurts.
Yeah.
What was great about that was that not only was you and Jason, Tim, it was also Ryan, who is that fantastic who plays the assistant
we
sailor.
got to talk about Ryan.
And Ryan is also is a fantastic comic. And having the 3 sort of comedy powerhouses in most of the scenes together was super helpful. It's
terrifying
really
for everybody else, but awesome on camera.
Well, you had to teach him to be a goat, right?
I had to teach him how to go walk.
Yeah, how to walk.
That was the first time we brought in for season 1 this incredible movement coach, Rod, and I'm so glad I got to see him again on season 3. But he originally taught me how to goat walk, and this was my first time teaching someone else. I was like passing down the mantle. It felt so wrong. Like I felt like he was gonna replace me. But I sent him a video from like the balcony of my house, being like, hey, this is how you do this.
You're on your toes, and you kind of want to squat down, almost like you're sitting, and you bring one foot back, and keep one foot forward.
I just think that's indicative of like the effort that we put into every aspect of the show. Like we built those chariot tracks. Like it's all practical this season.
It was a field. Right now,
was a field.
By the way, it's gone.
I
and
saw
now
it.
there's 4 cows
Yeah,
just
sadly it's gone.
eating grass.
Oh,
Freaked
sad.
me out.
Yeah.
And we all
Yeah.
the cabins, we built those. The dress from this season, which we
Oh my
see
God.
in this season.
It was the cabins itself were right next to where the chariot race was, and that was James. Tell the story about you and I, like walking in the first time into those woods 4 years ago or whatever.
Yeah,
it was.
so obviously this was season 1 a while back, and we had to choose a place to put the camp. And in the book it says it's outside really, so in a field. And I felt that Dan and I talked about it a lot, and putting it amongst trees would be kind of interesting, because the idea would be then that the trees had grown up around the camp. The camp had been there for a really long time, and so it needed to be kind of an old growth space. And in Vancouver, that's quite hard to find these days, because lots of Vancouver sets have been shot. So I saw like 20 different pieces of woodland over a period of like months. And eventually we found this space that just kind of worked for us, because it felt like it had been untouched and been there a long time, but it had a sort of remnants of old growth. If you look outside the Hermes cabin, there's a fantastic old tree, which must be like 2 meters in diameter, like huge thing. And so it felt just really old. And so then we built the cabins and really left the trees as they were.
You can't cut them
and so
down.
it looks like the trees have grown up around the buildings rather than vice versa, which makes it feel like a really old space. And so I love going back there every single time, because it has a real magic to it, I think.
Another scene that I wanted to talk about, speaking of the cabins, is that scene in the cabin with the empathy link sequence.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a huge part of this season. And there's a moment in the Poseidon cabin where Percy, I'm putting on the veil and tiara, which is a whole other thing we got to talk about too. Like the veil and the tiara, the dress. But I cover myself and I'm like, how do I look? And Percy, this wasn't originally in the script, speaking of improv moments. And it's just supposed to be, how do I look? Cut to the next scene. But Walker, on one of the takes, he was just like, beautiful. And I'm so happy that we kept that in.
You said his eyesight's bad. Can't you see past him?
He can still smell. He thinks I wear goat-scented perfume. Soon, he's gonna realize I'm a satyr, and the dinner is me. How do I look?
Beautiful.
On that, I feel like it'd be weird of us not to acknowledge the gods in this episode, with Lin making his big seasonal appearance in this episode.
I come bearing gifts and a special message from your pops. Quest approved.
Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hermes.
I'm sorry, Lin.
So there's this.
Man.
There's this.
He's a kind of a musical impresario.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did this run on the show House.
He does a thing on Broadway called Hamilton.
Hamilton.
You know,
Hamilton. It's about
All right, cool. Well, I'll
it's
look
about
that
the
up.
Secretary
Presidents
of like
you rap.
Defense or something.
Really good.
The president.
I
maybe?
never saw it.
I mean,
I don't know anything of it.
He's a good up and comer though.
We got word. So how Lin came to be was we got word that Lin's son, his eldest, was a massive Percy fan, and that actually there were moments where Lin on social media had written to Rick, or there was some little like back and forth, like nice little comments to each other, and so. I went to Wesleyan University and Lin went there, so we have a lot of mutual friends. He was a few years younger than me, but I'd never met him. But we sort of just put the feelers out there, like would he come? Would he be interested? And it took a second, and then we wrote. He was very busy, and then Rick wrote a letter to him, and very quickly it was just like, oh no, Lin needs to do this. Like it wasn't like, oh, maybe it was like, no, once it got to him and he was like, no, Lin's going to make time to be in this show. And it was like, it was a dream casting.
So occasionally, obviously, not only my kids come and visit, but my mum. My mother is very keen to come and see what I do.
I met her like 2 days ago.
She's the sweetest.
She's
In fact,
awesome.
I only met her the other day,
Yeah.
right? You met her
She's
for the
very
first time.
lovely.
But she just sits at the back of the video village watching what's going on. But obviously that day, there's Lin-Manuel Miranda on set, and she is a huge fan of his. So I've now got in my collection a whole load of photographs of Lin-Manuel Miranda and my mum sitting together as best friends at the back of Video Village, just kind of hanging out. And they talked like all day, because between takes she'd come over and hang out. And so I think for her it's one of the greatest days ever that she got to spend time with this guy as one of her absolute heroes. And he couldn't have been nicer about it. But now I've got lots of photographs on my phone of the two of them together as if they're like regular friends. It's just a fantastic thing. It's really funny.
But with the gods, it's like you got to work with Jason as like one of the gods. It's like the gods, like going back to like our grounded comments, like the gods we wanted to make real people. Like in that scene, when he's talking about Luke, it's like you feel the pain. Like you feel the pain that he has for this disconnect from his son.
Unbelievable. I try to do everything right, and I can't get my dad's attention for a second. Meanwhile, Luke is trying to tear down Olympus, and you're trying to save him.
He's my son.
Yeah, he's a dad in that moment. And I think that's why the Percy-Hermes connection, they're really relating to each other in that moment of like...
Yeah, because Percy wants his dad to be the same, right? To be as attentive as this. And he really feels that. The thing he thinks it's Poseidon to begin with. And it's kind of sad that it's not, that whole scene kind of has that at the beginning of it. Because Percy would love Poseidon to be as concerned as Hermes is about Luke to be about him,
Yeah.
It's a really interesting moment.
And they all do it. Like even Jason, and you can talk about like just working with you're the one who gets to work with a god every day. Like it was even Jason, who is ridiculous and hates everything, and there's moments where it's like he shows us when Jason has those moments where Mr. D really turns on, like about Kronos, that moment where the severity of Kronos is back. Like it is, you see that fear in his face, and it's like, so even though he can be as heightened, it's like, no, there's still underneath there is a child who is scared that his father's coming back. So there's just ways, like I love the different people we've cast for all the gods and how they are bringing that humanity to each one of those roles. It's because like the way we talk about it, this is a family saga. Like everyone's related in some point. Like this is all a big giant family saga.
It's a family that you can recognize. They're recognizable members of your own family, pretty much.
I did want to talk about Tantalus's beach attack at the end of episode 2 when he kind of sees Percy and Annabeth off, and Tyson. He misses his initial shot, and he could have just like walked up right behind him and just shot him in the back and been like, okay, we're great, and this whole thing is over now. But he does the very classic like villain monologue where he basically buys the hero time to get away. After being alive for like, what, 1 million years and probably making that same mistake in front of the gods, like I feel like he would have learned from his, like, does he let him go?
No, I think he just...
You don't bring a crossbow if you're going to let
I
someone
don't think
go.
you're going to bring a crossbow if you're going to ultimately be like, yeah, you guys are free to go. These have been tipped with celestial bronze, which is perfect for killing monsters and demigods. I remember having conversation with James about this, about like, if you have been in the underworld for millennia planning a revenge, I think you want that to take as long as possible.
Yeah, you enjoy it. He enjoys the moment, really does.
Yeah, you have to relish the moment.
It's the same thing as locking Percy away. You don't want to let that moment go.
Yeah.
Also, it's making a point to the gods, right? That's the real reason for this moment, is making a point to the gods about his own situation. It's almost like a revenge against them, the children of the gods he's going to kill.
Yes.
And he wants to make sure the gods can see that. They witness what he's doing. And I think if he just kills them from behind, it's not quite as good. He's planned this whole thing out to the very last bit.
Yeah.
And it is funny to think about the fact that he probably has been planning this for 1,000 years.
A long time.
And
he's like sitting there in the underworld.
He didn't plan for
ideas.
every eventuality. He missed one. He missed one eventuality.
But he probably wrote a script.
Yes. He has been through that script so many times.
But the one thing he didn't plan for was Tyson, which I think is hilarious.
He didn't count on a Cyclops
attacking
him from behind. That's not in the script. That's not supposed to happen here.
I also think it's really funny that Tyson is basically Percy's only loyal friend throughout the show. Like, I betray him in season 1, which I'm still sorry about. And Annabeth this season...
Barely. You're very harsh on yourself.
I did it for a good reason, but I still feel bad about it. And then Annabeth kind of... I guess on a technicality betrays him. Yeah, here.
Yeah, I mean,
for good reasons, as ever. All good reasons.
It's like it's coming out of the goodness of who they are to protect Percy. Like it's all coming from, you were trying to protect him in season 1, she's trying to protect him in season 2, and especially as Chiron's coming in and saying you cannot share the story of the great prophecy with him to protect him. But that emotional scene between them, that scene at the end where she has to come clean about everything that's happened to her over this year.
Yeah.
Those two delivered in such a level of performance that I think we were surprised by how deep it got.
Heavy. It was great.
And I think it comes from the bond that you guys all have together as friends. It feels real. It's like this is, off camera and on camera, you guys are all so tight and care about each other so much that when you do have to come clean about lying or not sharing, it's just it's feeling really real. I mean, that conversation really launches their whole relationship for the season to figure out what are they to each other when the stakes are getting this high. How are they going to move forward? How are they going to work together? When you have to keep a secret, and you have to keep a secret, and you have to accept that you're not that person's got to hold on to that secret. That's a pretty challenging thing, and Percy's got to process that. But it's because he so trusts her and they so care for each other that I think that they can even conquer lies, which is that's what that scene is really accomplishing as they start their quest. Wait, so I can.
Yeah. Oh, dude, you could have been eating this entire time. Please feel free.
We could have been eating this whole time?
Yeah, this is all for you guys. I actually did want to thank you. Dude, so good.
Oh, so incredible. Oh, you want the nuts? Sure.
Yeah, dude, thank you.
Seems a bit harsh on Tim. I mean, Tim can actually do this in real life, right?
I wanted to thank you guys for coming on. Here, I could probably take those off.
Oh, you're gonna.
Great ship.
It's great, right? Thank you
so
for the food,
good.
guys, by the way. Watch and listen to the Percy Jackson and the Olympians official podcast, available on Disney Plus and wherever you get your podcasts. And don't miss Percy Jackson and the Olympians, now streaming on Disney Plus.